Hello everyone and welcome to another video finally on the car channel. Now, this is my Land Rover Freelander. Some may consider it the baby Land Rover and some of my friends joke that it shouldn't be called a Land Rover at all. With an original price tag of over £30,000, this HSE model has all the mod cons and features you would expect, such as heated seats, electric everything, a touchscreen display and built-in sat-nav. Today, Parkers value it at around £4,500 if you're buying it from an independent dealer. I didn't buy mine from an independent dealer, I got mine from the car auction. You know, the place where hundreds of vehicles of all ages and prices are auctioned off to the highest bidder. After getting into a bidding war with, well, one other attendee, I eventually won this Land Rover for £2,600. Having been chucked through the auction, everyone was quick to assume that there was something wrong with it, and after being given the 2 keys, a stack of service history, and 10 years worth of receipts, I was free to go and discover any impending quirks or issues for myself. The first minor concern was that the system interface was set to Portuguese. No big deal, that's what my D-grade language qualification is for, right? Gotta put it to use sometimes. After setting the language and choking on the abundance of German Shepherd hair still floating around the interior, I took the car to a friend's house and we went for a little drive. It handles fine and runs nicely. Everything works from the heated seats to the electric mirrors, along with all the various terrain response modes, which can be adjusted according to the surface under your car, such as grass, gravel or snow, mud ruts and sand. The dynamic stability control and hill descent modes all work as expected too. Over the course of the following months, I found it to be quite economical as well. Well, as far as Land Rovers go. You can expect about 30 miles to the gallon combined, and every one of the 450 to 500 miles you can squeeze out of a tank of diesel will be fairly pleasurable. With 161 brake horsepower and a 0 to 60 time of 11 seconds, they won't be the fastest miles of your life, but no one ever bought a Land Rover based on speed stats. I don't think so. Anyway, I like the size of the Freelander too. It's not much bigger than most modern family cars, but at the same time it still feels very spacious, more so with the rear seats down. You can get it dirty during the week, throw some junk in the back and maybe run it through the woods if you're feeling like a little off-roading session, but come the weekend it will scrub up nicely enough to take the family out in. Is a Land Rover really a Land Rover without a few minor problems, both electrical or otherwise? Well, let's continue our scenic drive and I'll talk to you about everything that comes to mind. If you don't like this POV style camera setup, let me know and I'll switch back to a static cam in the future if most of you want me to film these videos that way. The first problem is actually with the key, or maybe the sensor in the car, I'm not quite sure yet. Whatever it is, when it's cold outside, the car will just refuse to unlock, sometimes after hundreds of presses of the button. I would try and change the battery in the key fob just to check, but on this model it's actually soldered to the motherboard and cannot be replaced unless you take it to a main dealer or have experience with a soldering iron. That's probably the route I would go down to save a little bit of money. The next issue I found, only after a few months of ownership, was actually with the fuel gauge. Say you're driving on a motorway, the car feels smooth enough at any speed, but when you hit the legal limit of 70 miles per hour, sometimes the fuel needle will just drop to empty. Initially I thought the fuel tank just split open or something, maybe I hit a rock in the middle of the road that I didn't see, but as I continued on my way, profusely sweating as I kept an eye out for the next fuel stop, the needle climbed back up to its previous position. This has happened twice at different speeds. Strange. Perhaps the most perplexing issue though is the odometer. I believe some tampering has occurred. See, I bought this car with 121,000 miles on the clock, at least according to the latest MOT paperwork. If you're watching this outside of the UK, an MOT is a yearly safety inspection that cars have to pass in order to remain road legal, unless your car is over 40 years old, in which case it's MOT exempt. New cars also don't need an MOT test in their first 3 years of being registered. My Freelander here is 11 years old and has a pretty clean sheet, almost too clean. In fact, it's apparently covered less miles than is listed on the test paperwork, and I noticed that every 100 to 200 miles I drive, the mileage counter resets to the same number, 120,011. How dodgy is that? I think either this has been done purposely to keep the mileage looking low-ish, or it is just the sign of a bigger electrical problem. What worries me though is that I actually have no idea of how many miles this car has covered in its lifetime. It could have done 200,000, it could have done 300,000, it could have done 1 million. I am not to know. But it doesn't drive like that. It drives as though it's done, maybe 150,000 at most, but it is a Land Rover and the engines run forever, so it could have done 500,000 just as easy. Perhaps the previous owner covered so many miles that he decided to tamper with the reading, as to keep some sort of resale value in the car. I mean, who wants to purchase a car with 500,000 miles on the clock? But what gets me is why you would make it appear lower than is listed on the last MOT test. That is a big oopsie on the previous owner's part. And the auction house didn't even mention it, which was odd. As far as problems go, that's really it. All minor fixes, I'm sure. Well, I'm not that sure. I also want to touch on the running costs. Here in the UK, with current diesel prices, it costs between £80 and £90 depending on the petrol station to fill the tank. I pay £600 to insure it for the year as a 25-year-old with a few years no claims bonus, and to tax it for the year it costs £315, £25 more than the manual gearbox version. There is also a 3.2 litre petrol model that costs a whopping £555 to tax for 12 months. Unless you have a bottomless fuel budget, I wouldn't recommend that one at all. Sure, it will be very quick, but the fuel consumption will be atrocious. So should you buy a car from auction? Well, there's no denying it can be risky. I'd suggest putting aside an extra budget on top of the money you plan to spend at the auction itself. For example, if you want to buy a £5,000 car, bid up to £4,000 and put the rest aside just in case any work needs to be carried out. Also look for cars described as having no major faults, which are usually labelled as such, as this means you can get a refund should a serious mechanical fault occur. Sold as seen vehicles are even more risky. Every auction house is different and so is every car, but there's no denying some serious bargains can be found. I've seen cars go for as little as £90. It was a Ford Mondeo estate from about 1996, but £90 for a car that runs is a bargain in any regard. As far as this Land Rover Freelander, or Freelander II I should say, goes, well, I think it's an okay car for the money I paid for it. I came in at under the retail price that you may expect to see one of these at on a privately owned forecourt, but it isn't without its issues which may have been fixed by a second-hand car dealer should they have obtained it themselves, and I probably would have only paid a little more to get a car that was in fully working order. But I like a little bit of a project sometimes. I'm happy with the purchase. I enjoy being able to chuck a load of junk in the back, go to the dump and then put the seats up and perhaps go for a little bit of an off-roading session. I don't like it as much as my old Land Rover Discovery, but I don't miss the poor fuel consumption on that at all. And of course the Freelander isn't actually made anymore, so you can't buy one new. Bear that in mind as well if you want to purchase one. Well, with all that said and done, I do hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been about a year since I've uploaded on this channel, but hopefully I can get back into the swing of things here. I can upload more regularly, and hopefully you can join me for any future vehicle-based endeavours. If you like this video, leave a like on it, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.